All right, guys, here in number 2, it says assume that the following figures are drawn to scale. Use your understanding of congruence and rigid motion to explain why square ABCD and rhombus GHIJ are not congruent. Okay. So if you notice, guys, remember that in order for a figure to be congruent, all sides have to be congruent and all angles have to be congruent. And you guys can see, hopefully, that all your sides here have single tick marks on them. And all your sides here also have single tick marks on them, which means, guys, that the distance between the points or the sides all stayed the same. However, in here, guys, you're going to notice that we have a right angle box, and here we don't. And so our angles, and you guys can see that those don't look like 90-degree angles. Not that we're supposed to go based on looks, but there is no 90-degree angle in there. The box. And so we're going to say that the angle measure, guys, did not stay the same. So the angle measure was not preserved. And therefore, guys, there is no rigid motion that maps our one square onto our rhombus. And if there's no rigid motion, we have to say that the figures are not congruent. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say what we just talked about, but write it down this time. So we're going to say that the distance between points is preserved. Oops, sorry, I spelled that wrong. Preserved. Okay, which means that the sides are congruent. But the angle measure is not preserved. Okay, and we're going to say in one last sentence, both properties must be preserved for the figures to be congruent. Okay, we can also add in one more sentence because they asked us to talk about congruence, which we did, but they also asked us to mention rigid motions, which we didn't. And so we're going to also say that there is no rigid motion that maps ABCD onto GHIJ. Okay, and so that should be good for number 2 with our explanation. All right. Number 3, guys, it says in the diagram pictured, all of the smaller triangles are congruent to each other, and they want you to describe the rigid motion that maps ZB onto AZ. Again, guys, there's actually, I can think of a lot of rigid motions. I can see that I could take that red line segment and slide it to the blue one. I also see that I could reflect the red line segment and flip it onto the blue one. I also see, guys, that I could rotate the red line segment onto the blue one. And so we have to make sure that we're playing our letter game so that we don't get tricked. So again, guys, we have to make sure that we know that Z needs to go on to A, and that B is the second letter, needs to go on to Z. All right, so Z from the red one has to go on to A from the red one. And now that I know, guys, that Z from the red one has to go on to A from, the blue one, there's only one way I can do it. If I flip the red line segment, guys, that's not going to make it go. All right, if I flip it, Z would stay Z. If I rotate it, Z would stay Z. The only way, guys, that I can get this red one and have Z go onto A is if I slide it up there. Slide the red one all the way up onto the blue one. All right, and so because I'm sliding, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a translation. That's not specific enough, guys, when we talk about translations. However, we're not in a graph, so we can't count units. But what we can do is we can talk about the vector. So we're going to do a translation along vector And again, guys, if Z is going on to A, that's a great vector right there. Okay, we would say vector Z A. All right, we could also talk about B going to Z, so we could say vector BZ as well if you wanted to. All right. All right, if we wanted to do it in notation, guys, we would do our capital T for our translation, and then our subscript would be our vector, and it doesn't matter which vector you say. I'm going to say ZA. All right, those mean the same exact thing. All right, we got another question. Number 4, it says in the picture, in the diagram pictured, we have triangle ABC, and it's saying that it's congruent to triangle ADC. And it says describe the rigid motion that maps CB onto CD. All right, guys, I don't think I can slide it. If I slide CB, it's not going to be in the same direction CD is going in. So translation's out. If I reflect it, I can see how a reflection would map it on there. I can also see how I could rotate it on there. So because I'm not quite sure, I'm going to make sure that I look at the letters because those should help me out. Notice, guys, C is going to go to C, and that B is going to go to D. Now that I know, guys, that B is going to go to D and C is going to stay C, I still don't know if it's a reflection or a rotation. I can see how I could reflect it over. I also see how I can turn that line segment over. All right, so I'm not 100% sure. But if you look here, guys, if you look at the triangles and that A has to go on to A, that B has to go on to D, and that C has to go on to C, how am I going to get the red triangle onto the blue triangle? Hopefully, you guys, when you look at the big picture and you look at the triangles, you're going to realize that you're not turning the red triangle around, okay, that you're reflecting it. And so because this is a reflection of the triangles, it's going to be a reflection for the line segments as well. And so now, guys, we have it picked. We're going to go ahead and say that this is a reflection. Okay, and we're going to say that it's a reflection over this line right here called AC. That is the line we're reflecting the triangles over. So that's going to be the line that we're reflecting the little line segments on the bottom over as well. So it's a reflection over AC. We could also notate that, guys, as a lowercase r, and then our subscript would be AC. Okay. All right, guys, number 5, it says, given the congruency statement, triangle MAC is congruent to triangle HJK, and we don't have a picture, so I'm going to go ahead and draw you guys one. Because they're saying that the triangles are congruent, guys, you want to make sure that when you draw both of them that they're twins, all right, that they look exactly the same. So try to make sure that your triangles look exactly the same when you draw them. All right, so something maybe like that. I'm going to go back, guys, and label M, A, C. Now, when I label my next triangle, I want to make sure that it's a twin with it. So where I labeled M, I have to make sure I label H. Where I labeled A, I have to make sure I label J. And where I labeled C, I have to make sure I label K. All right, and now, guys, they're asking to figure out what side is congruent to MA. Well, MA is right here, okay? And therefore, guys, that matches with this side. So MA, M matches with H, and A matches with J, so MA matches HJ. You guys can also go ahead and play the letter game up here. Notice MA is the first two, HJ is the first two, okay? So you could get your letters from there too, so you didn't even have to draw a picture, but sometimes the visual helps us a lot. All right, guys, next one up says, what angle is congruent to angle C? Well, angle C, guys, is right here, okay? And that's in the same location as angle K. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say that angle C is congruent or matches angle K. All right, part C, guys, says what side is congruent to CM? C to M is that line segment, so C matches with K, and M matches with H, so CM matches KH. All right, and that one's finished. All right, number 6, guys, they give us another similar one to number 5. They're giving us 2 congruent triangles. They do give us a picture this time, so I'm going to find my triangles in the picture and highlight them. But triangle ADB looks like this one here. And triangle BCA is this one here. Notice, guys, your triangles do a little overlapping, and sometimes that can get really confusing. And so what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take my triangles and I'm going to kind of pull them out of there and redraw them. So my first triangle, guys, is called ADB. I'm going to redraw it over here. Relabel ADB. Okay. I'm going to then grab my other triangle out of there, BCA, and I'm going to pull it over here, BCA, BCA. Okay, and now that they're separated, it becomes just like we did in number 5. So if in number 5 it was easy, hopefully now that they're separated, it'll be just as easy. All right, so in this one, guys, they're asking me what matches with BD so that I know who it's congruent to. So BD is in my green triangle, which is that side, and therefore, guys, that side would match in my blue triangle side. Okay, or you could play the letter game and realize that BD is the last 2 letters, so AC is the last 2 letters there. And so that is what I highlighted. I could double check it, and now I can go ahead and write it down knowing I'm right. In part B, guys, they asked me because they're being specific and telling me my triangle in a specific order, and this is my green triangle. And because they're putting A first, B in the middle, and D last, I have to make sure that I state my triangle that's blue in the same exact order. All right, so because they said A matches in our blue triangle with B. B in our green triangle matches with A, and D in our green triangle matches with C. And so when they say triangle ABD, I have the matching letter order for the other triangle called triangle BAC. Okay. Next one, guys, they're asking me about side AD. Okay. And side AD is in my green triangle. They want to know what side does that match with in my blue one, and it's going to match with this one here. So because they said AD, I have to make sure I match them and say BC. Okay. Last one up there, guys, and this triangle is called triangle DAB. Oops. Okay. Triangle DAB is going to match with my triangle with the same matching letters. Let's see, we got triangle. Let's see, D in this triangle, which is up here, guys, matches with C. That A in this triangle matches with B. And that B in this triangle matches with A. So if they called the triangle DAB, I would match them and say triangle CBA. So we're just working on corresponding and matching no matter what kind of picture they give us, or now no picture, or if the picture is flipped or turned, we have to make sure that we're matching our letters or our angles or our sides or our vertices correctly with our other triangle. And so highlighting helps. Redrawing pictures that are complicated into more simple by separating them also helps us, okay? All right, guys, I will see you on the next day of notes.